Several new governors are going to be sworn into office under Kenya's new constitution. These ceremonies mark the beginning of a county government system, which amongst other things will involve the decentralisation of the country's resources. So joining us for more on that is Jason Nakin, who is a fellow at the International Budget Partnership. Good morning, Jason. Perhaps just set the scene here. It's the presidential election has taken a lot of attention in the last few weeks, and of course it still is, because there's still that court case with argument continuing yesterday. But this sounds like quite a radical departure for Kenya. Just before we talk about how good or bad a thing it is, tell us what is going to happen under this new constitution.
Sure, thanks, David. This really is an ambitious decentralization reform here in Kenya. Many people have referred to it as a big bang decentralization because it involves decentralizing political, administrative, and fiscal responsibilities to 47 new counties, an entirely new level of government, which will be taking charge of a vast array of services in health, agriculture, and other areas of both social and economic life. So there are really huge changes afoot. In addition to the governors who, as you mentioned, were sworn in yesterday, actually, there are a new set of county assembly members who are basically functioning as mini parliaments in each county to hold the executive in check. They have major powers in budget making and policy making, and a dedicated share of resources is to be devolved to each of these counties to run the services that they're responsible for under Kenya's new constitution.
That sounds like quite a big project, and we in South Africa have experience of it on a more limited scale. In fact, if you think we used to have 4 provinces before 1994, first democratic elections, we ended up with 9 provinces, and we are still battling with the legacy of having to invent new administrations and new bureaucracies and so on. So clearly this is easier said than done. I suppose one of the questions is, where will the budget come from? Because administration depends on budget, and people who hold the budget and have the power over it have the real power.
It's a great question, David. I think one of the common misconceptions about devolution is that it actually entails lots of new resources, when in fact we're basically dividing up existing resources amongst new levels of government. So you have a dedicated share in the Constitution. It's required that at least 15% of resources be devolved to county governments. In addition to that, there can be both conditional and unconditional grants that would supplement what counties have access to. But that's money which has been going for services in the past, so it's not new money. And that's been one of the misconceptions. So it's a good question. Where is the money going to come from to actually improve services, enhance people's access to services? Because people have very high hopes that under devolved government, services will improve and that more people will have access to them. I think there are sort of 2 ways in which this can happen. One is the creation of new national institutions which are in charge of actually streamlining the way that administration works. So for example, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission is in charge of actually reducing the wage bill in Kenya, and that would be one source of new funds for development spending. The second place in which this really has to happen is that government becomes more efficient and is able to spend money spends money in more accountable ways. So that is the big hope of devolution, of course, that at the county level, if you have officials that are closer to the population, that people can hold them accountable, that resources can be used in a more transparent way, and that this will in turn lead to a better use of those resources for services.
Is there clarity, Jason, on what services will be devolved to local level and what services or functions would be retained at national level? Because obviously there has to be a balance between the two, and there's certain national functions like defence, for example, which would have to be a national function. So in other words, how enthusiastic really is the central government on giving up power?
Well, that's a fantastic question, David, and we're right in the middle of that right now. So the government has set up something called the Transition Authority, which is in charge of making the final determinations about who's going to be doing what. So the Constitution lays out in broad terms what national government is supposed to be doing and what county governments are supposed to be doing. And as you rightly say, things like defense will continue to be primarily national responsibilities, while other services such as health are being substantially devolved to counties. At the same time, the broad direction that's provided by the Constitution is completely insufficient to really know exactly which level of government is supposed to do what. And that's why the Transition Authority was set up to do an analysis, really, of what's happening in each sector. What does it take to deliver services in education, in health, in agriculture? And then to make sure that we divide those responsibilities up very clearly so we know what national government's doing, what county government's doing, and then finally to ensure that finance follows function, that the money to actually implement these services goes to the right level of government. Unfortunately, this process has been seriously delayed, and so we've already started to devolve. We have new governors, we have counties taking over certain services already, but we still don't know exactly what services, what functions each level of government is supposed to do, and we can't verify, therefore, that finance is actually starting to follow function, because we don't know exactly what the functions are, and we further don't really know exactly how much it costs to deliver those services. So there's been a big delay in that, and I think that this is going to pose a major challenge. And as you imply, there is some evidence that national government line ministries in particular have been a bit reluctant to make the hard decisions about giving up certain services and allowing them to be devolved, and with them the financing and the power that comes with that.